Hi, Chris Mason, owner of At Large Nutrition. I want to take a minute today and talk to you about, in an unrehearsed, unscripted fashion, dieting for fat loss. The genesis of this little ramble, if you will, has to do with things I've been seeing online lately. As you may or may not be aware, I frequent quite a few online forums related to fitness, strength training, etc. Also, people I've been dealing with individually on a daily basis. And kind of a nutshell, I would say it's probably more focused on women, but certainly men are inclusive in this group. And what I want to talk about is dieting, what I call a living diet. In other words, most of the programs that are out there are essentially fattist diets. In other words, they are diets which are restrictive in some way, shape, or form. Whether they, completely restrict certain food groups, certain macronutrients, whatever it may be, extremely low calorie diets. If you look in the medical community, what is frequently recommended by doctors and dietitians and things of that nature, people of that nature, are extremely low calorie diets. And I would presume that has to do with the fact that, they a lot of times will reference studies, and certainly a low-calorie diet will work for a period of time and you will lose significant body weight. The problem with those diets, and this is really, I'd say again, the primary thrust of this discussion, is that your body is a highly adaptive organism. If you go, say you're a woman, and let's say you're significantly overweight. Let's say you're 5'7", you weigh in the 200-pound range, and you go on a 1,200 calorie per day diet, which is something that I would say happens with some frequency. You will definitively lose a lot of weight fairly quickly, but you'll get to a point where you will still be heavier than you want to be, very likely, and stagnated at that caloric intake. In other words, you'll be consuming 1,200 calories per day, and you will no longer be able to lose weight, body fat. And where do you go from there? In other words, you can't really go any lower, or else you risk starvation. And frankly, at such a low caloric intake, the likelihood you're short on micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, things of that nature, is quite high. In other words, you're probably deficient in certain things. So such diets are not even healthy from that standpoint. And getting back to the body will essentially slow down your metabolism in an attempt to remain in what's called stasis, or in other words, to stay as it is, not lose any additional weight. It's protecting itself. It's trying to keep you from killing yourself, basically. And it's very effective at that. The problem then becomes, you reach that point. Now again, you've been on a terribly restrictive diet, and you may be even restricting a lot of foods that you really like to eat. You probably are. And nobody can do that forever. You're going to crack sooner or later. You're going to go back to eating normally. You're going to want to have foods that you've been depriving yourself of. And when that happens, when your caloric intake goes back up, your body not only does not adjust, does not speed up the metabolism accordingly, it doesn't quite work the same in reverse, so to speak. It also becomes extremely efficient at accumulating body fat. Again, it's kind of a protective measure, if you will, against future starvation modes. And that's where you get the whole yo-yo dieting thing that is so prevalent in the world today, and a big cause, frankly, of a lot of the obesity that we see going on. This cycle I'm talking about, where people go on ultra-low-calorie diets or highly restrictive diets, their body adjusts, they crack, they go back to eating normally for a period of time, they end up gaining more body fat, they've lost muscle mass, so their body composition is even worse, and they're at a heavier body weight than they ever have been. So it's a complete catch-22. So the bottom line is, if you're dieting and you're in the 1,500 or less calorie range, whether you're a man or a woman, and you're not losing weight, you're doing something horribly wrong. What I recommend, and I'm going to write an article about this, so there'll be more detail. I can't get into all the detail in this short video, but what I recommend is a living diet. I allow people to eat the foods that they enjoy. Now, the one caveat I have is I strongly encourage people to avoid simple sugars as much as possible. Look, if you want to have a cookie, have a cookie. But I don't want you eating cookies every day. But you can eat all the normal foods that you like to eat. And what we do is we do a calorie count. And what I like to do is I take people at whatever their starting point is. Again, let's go back to that 200-pound woman example. I would have her use, for smartphones nowadays, you can purchase or download apps. They're extremely easy to use. You carry your phone with you everywhere you go. You can track exactly what you're eating and drinking. You'll know exactly how many calories you're consuming daily. So I have them track their calories for a week. You can also do it on the computer, by the way. Do it for a week, average it out, find out, in other words, total up the calories, divide it by 7, find out what their average daily intake is. So let's say in that example, the woman is consuming 3,300 calories as an example. What I would do is I would have her start a diet with 3,000. I'd drop it 200 to 300 below her current average consumption rate. And then from there on out, I have her pick one day per week, or him if it was a guy. And Sunday's a great day for most people. As soon as they roll out of bed, I have them take a waist measurement. And you literally put a tape measure around your navel level, belly button level, make sure it stays even all the way around the waist, and they measure it. And by the way, and this really is a mental problem for a lot of people, you have to completely relax the stomach. The reason being is because any deviation in how much you're holding in your stomach on a given day that you take a measurement can bastardize or can ruin the effectiveness of the measurement. You won't be able to gauge variation in the measurement, which is the whole point. So you have to completely relax your stomach. And again, you also do it right after waking up because you've had a minimum, in most people's case, of 8-hour fast. You haven't consumed anything. So your stomach is not full. There's not a lot of sodium, let's say, from a previous meal that's making you hold water. So you've kind of eliminated, you're controlling the variables, if you will. So you can get a consistent measure, and a consistent measure to gauge from a week-to-week basis. What that does is your waist measurement is a great, and that's a true waist measurement, is a great indicator of body fat. In other words, if that waist gets smaller, it's extremely likely you've lost body fat. I mean, there's some mitigating circumstances, but this is an inexpensive, easy to do, very effective, and quite accurate way of determining how your body fat levels are going. In addition, as soon as you're done with that, I have the individual step on a scale and take their body weight. And so what we do is we take those two numbers each week. So again, that 200-pound woman, let's say she started off on the 3,000 calories. A week later, we take a measurement. Let's say she lost a pound of body weight and her waist stayed the same. I would have her stay at the same caloric intake for the following week. And by the way, I would also, of course, you have to be doing resistance training during this process. There's nothing that will enhance body composition better than resistance training. It will allow you to maintain muscle mass as you lose body fat, which will allow you to maintain your metabolism better. It will allow you to burn more fat at both rest and during exercise. It's just a superior method. Running and endurance training is not ideal for body composition. That's where you see people that are what I call skinny fat. They lose weight, but they don't look tight, they don't look good at that lower body weight. So you can incorporate some aerobic work, like I typically will have people do 2 to 3 days per week of 20 to 30 minutes, keeping their heart rate in the 125 range, 120 to 130, let's say. And you do that after your resistance training. And I like to see them resistance train 3 to 4 days per week. And again, I'll write an article, we'll get into more detail about that. But so again, we use those measurements. So let's say that first week the weight stayed the same, she lost a pound. I would have her maintain the same caloric intake the next week. Now let's say the next week her body weight stayed the same, but her waist shrank by 1/4 of an inch. I would still have her stay at the same caloric intake. As long as she's moving in the right direction, whether it's body weight or waist measurement, either one of those two or both, I will keep the caloric intake the same. It's when that stagnates, when we get no movement on either side, that I would then adjust the calories. And I usually go in 200 calorie decrements, or decrease by 200 calories per day. So I would switch to 2,800 calories once I felt like it was stagnated. And you continue with this process. And what this allows you to do is maximize your lean muscle mass, again, like we were just talking about the resistance training, as you're losing body fat. It keeps your metabolism up much better than going on an extremely low-calorie diet. Bottom line is it allows you to lose weight effectively. You're not starving yourself of foods that you like to eat, so you don't feel like you're depriving yourself. It's something that you can do for the rest of your life. And when you get to a point where you're comfortable with your body weight, you know how much you're eating per day. You really no longer have to even count the calories. So let's say 4 or 5 months later, you're down to a target body weight. You know what you're eating to maintain that body weight, and you just stay in that range. I mean, at that point, your body, again, is somewhat adaptive. If your calories go up slightly, it's not like you're just going to pack weight back on. As long as you stay close to what you were eating, and you'll be able to maintain that body weight essentially indefinitely. So, let's see. There's something else I want to cover. That's the gist of it. You know, the number one, my apologies. I told you this was unscripted. Within the diet itself, what I like to do with people, and this is not something you have to do, but I think it makes it easy. Everybody's life today is extremely busy. You're running around, you've got kids to take care of, you've got your job, etc., etc., etc. So what I typically will do is I'll have people eat 2 to 3 food meals per day, depending on the individual, and then 2 meals that I incorporate supplement shakes. The reason being is because the shakes are extremely easy to gauge. In other words, you put 2 scoops in here or 3 scoops and you got exactly this many calories, that much protein, etc. You know exactly what you're ingesting. They're convenient, they're easy to use. So when you're on the run, you can bring a shake with you, shake it up in a little shaker cup, drink it, bam, you're done. That's a meal done. And you know, a lot of people in this day and age don't have time literally to fix more than a couple meals per day. So like most people, if they get up a little early, they can get themselves breakfast. And breakfast is a great meal to consume. So I have them consume actually a pretty heavy, good-sized breakfast. I'll have the 2 middle meals typically be shakes, and then they go home for dinner and have a nice dinner. You know, a prepared or a cooked dinner, or they can go out or whatever it may be. So that's another part of this process. And again, I'll address more of this in the article, but I wanted to touch on it. I want people to see this and understand that the fattest people that are selling you diets and selling you, they have to make their diet different. They have to, if they just tell you what I'm telling you, you're not really selling much. You're selling logic. You know, if I tell you that, gee, if you skip this food, this food, and this food, and you eat no carbohydrates and this, that, you're gonna lose body weight and all this stuff. It's got an appeal to it at a level because you say, well, I just avoid this. The problem is, again, while those diets may work in the short term, they never work in the long term. That's why everybody's so obese. That's why the world is getting obese. So trust me on this, it's extremely effective. I've done it many, many, many times with many individuals. And it's a living diet. It will allow you to get to a body weight you're comfortable with and to stay there. Thanks for your time. And again, stay tuned for the article that I'll have on this subject very soon.